This Friday, the English Championship kicks off for action. Why is that important? Well, that's what I'm here to tell you. As many of you know, there's been an influx of American players into the English Championship the last few years. The English Championship, formerly known as the second division in England, and then when the first division changed its name to the Premier League, the second division changed its name to the first division, and then they figured they needed something that sounded a little cooler, so they changed your name to the English Championship, and then the division below them changed their name to the first division. It sounds like a Ted Lasso joke, although he would be much funnier. Jason Sudeikis would be much funnier in the delivery than I would, but there you have it. It's an interesting league. The history of English football is so interesting because there was so much money. You know, we talk about the Super League. Well, before there was the Super League, there was the Premier League, an apparatus to separate from English federations so that this group of teams, the elite clubs in England, could broker their own TV deal and many other things. And now look at it now. It is just a money machine, the English Premier League. But then you have the Championship, which doesn't have that financial stability or lucrative element. It is the 9th richest in Europe, according to these reports. The 10th best attended in the world. So people go and watch it. And a lot of great teams have played down there that eventually come up to the Premier League. We could mention Leeds United recently, or Brentford. So it's a springboard league. But in the world of football, where we don't have all that much time, the fact that we have to watch the English Championship it's not great. I'm not taking any shots, but we have to go all in right now because there's some important American players in the English Championship. And look, it's having to watch more championship games is not exactly tingling me with excitement. It is not the best brand of football. We always compare it to MLS, and maybe there should be a tournament of championship teams versus MLS. We don't know who's going to win it. I tend to think the MLS clubs will, but who's to know? And that tournament will never happen because it's not sexy enough. But I will say this, the English Championship and MLS at their basics, you know, lobbing the ball, sometimes not a lot of the technical ability that you would like, but MLS does have a higher gear in the sense that you could turn on a game and watch Carlos Vela, or Lorenzo Insigne, or Gareth Bale, or Chicharito. These kind of guys, you don't get there in the English Championship because there are limitations. But beside the point, we're committed. We're going to watch some games, including this Friday when Burnley travel to face Huddersfield. And guess what? Huddersfield's got an American. It's got an American. Dwayne Holmes. Kid, Georgia born, grew up in England. Georgia is in Hotlanta, although I believe I read he was born in Columbus, Georgia. Big military camp town. I remember I went to school way down there. And so there we go. We're off and running. So we will discuss the English Championship and the U.S. men's national team repercussions today on the Soccer OG. Check out the Soccer OG podcast. You can still hear the one with Lori Lindsay. We're talking about Euro 2022. Soon to drop. Check out the podcast with Paul Tenorio. We'll talk about players that we see here today. We'll talk about others that may be making the move and making this U.S. men's national team even stronger. So the English Championship, 24 teams. So it's a 46-game season. This is like, it's like a Major League Baseball. It's endless. Top 2 teams go to the Premier League. The teams that finish 3rd through 6th have a playoff, and the team that wins that playoff also joins the Premier League. So this year that team was Nottingham Forest, which had an American, which has now been loaned to a championship club. I believe there are 7 Americans in total currently in the championship. We mentioned Dwayne Holmes. We have Matthew Olasunde at Rotherham. Ethan Horvath, who was the loaned player from Nottingham Forest down to Luton Town. Josh Sargent, Sebastian Soto with Norwich. Soto doesn't really touch the field with Norwich. And Zach Steffen at Middlesbrough, who was with Manchester City before making the loan down to Middlesbrough that narrowly missed promotion as well, or the promotion playoffs. They were right in the mix of it. I believe there are more Americans in the Premier League right now than the championship. So let's go. We have Christian Pulisic at Chelsea. We have the 2 Leeds players, Brendan Aronson and Tyler Adams. We have the 2 Fulham players, Fulham was in the Championship, now in the Premier League. Anthony Robinson and Tim Ream. And then you have, Matt Turner, who currently the backup at Arsenal. Is that 6, 7 players? 6. So maybe a little bit more in the Championship. So why are we getting so excited about what is happening in the English Championship? 4 players in particular, which we will talk about, all who have a claim, if this season goes well, to be on the plane to Qatar. One of them could be the starting goalkeeper. This is the conversation we're having. Matt Turner's an option, but if he doesn't play at Arsenal, maybe one of these 2 guys can take the reins. And then we're looking for a certain player, I think, for the attacking. We have number 9s. Right now, we have Jesus Ferreira, Haji Wright, we'll include him, Jordan Pefok, Ricardo Pepi, who some good signs early on with Augsburg, getting involved in that team's mechanics. That is certainly a guy that is in the mix. And who am I missing? Daryl Dk, who we'll talk about here in a moment. That's for the number 9. And then there's a position that is technically a winger that in a game where the U.S. might be trailing, could come up and create a second aerial threat, a guy who could play as a second number 9, because the U.S. play really with 1 and the 2 wingers. But in a pinch, a guy who can get in the area, maybe head you a goal. Number 1 candidate right now for that position to me is Jordan Morris. These would be included on the wingers. So you have Pulisic, Weah, Aronson, Areola. I know I'm missing someone as well. Perhaps Gio Reyna, that could fill that position. But of all those wingers, one of them has to be, to me, a specialist in the sense that they could score a goal coming up as a second forward to whoever's playing the forward. I hope that made sense. Jordan Morris fits the bill. The other guy who could fit the bill and is starting to play that position a little bit more often with his club is Josh Sargent. So I truly believe you have one of those 2 guys could go if things go well. Because I think Greg Berhalter is looking for a player that can do that. Maybe you end up playing 20 minutes of the World Cup, but for those could be important 20 minutes for a guy who can do that job. And I'm pretty sure Greg Berhalter is looking for someone like that. IMO. So we'll talk about the 4 main guys, and Dwayne Holmes, all due respect, good hardworking player, did get capped a couple times for the U.S. We can't really include him. And by the way, there will be more American players going to the championship. It's been a bit of a conveyor belt. Not a great one. Obviously, Daryl Dk arrived, injured his knee, has been out for a while. Jordan Morris went to the championship. Paul Areola, those guys got injured. We're back in the U.S. lickety split. Daryl Dk went to Barnsley and did well. So the eyes of the championship see good value in American players and can probably get them on a loan. Makes sense. It's a pathway to possibly the Premier League. As we saw with Anthony Robinson, but that's not really, he wasn't American-based. So I expect maybe in the winter, maybe a couple other Americans, which will be after the World Cup, unfortunately, but the championship's going to be viable. So that's why we have to watch, even though sometimes it looks like volleyball. Ball in the air, header, header, header. Ball out of play, header. Just having a laugh. Just having a laugh. Let us talk about what do we have right now? And we'll start with the goalkeepers. I think the most optimistic development is Zach Steffen, Middlesbrough team that has resources, a team that is hovering for promotion more years than not, a team with a rich history in the Premier League with some players that we can identify with. And they needed a goalkeeper. He got loaned early on, reading the Northern Echo and other publications that cover Middlesbrough. They're very happy with him. And he got high ratings in a game that they had, I believe, with, was it Marseille? Doesn't really matter, but he got high grades. So Zach Steffen, who's competing for that number 1 shirt, tends to think that he has that inside track, I think, on that number 1 shirt. It comes down to how these guys look. And Greg Berhalter on his media tour recently said as much. So who can get in there and grab hold of that job? Because it's very close. Zach Steffen is in the right position to make that impact. By the way, I forgot to mention this. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe, people. We got to get those numbers up. We're getting close to the World Cup. So good for Zach Steffen and his move to Middlesbrough. So we're going to watch Middlesbrough games. Next, it is Ethan Horvath at Luton Town. Luton Town actually finished ahead of Middlesbrough in the standings in 6th and made it into the Premier League playoffs, the playoffs to make the Premier League. Lost to Huddersfield. Luton Town, not a team you would expect high in the championship. So what they're doing tells you that this is a club that have been very savvy with their player signings and their recruiting, their academies, all of that. Luton Town's doing something right. And Ethan Horvath playing early in these friendlies, looking okay. Again, haven't really seen a lot, and most people haven't. We're just going based on some reports. But we will be able to get to see it because you can see all these games on ESPN+. Ethan Horvath certainly off the back tire of Turner and Steffen. But a good few months can change a lot. I just don't think there's enough time for him to close it. It's a good opportunity. He's going to be playing games. Nottingham Forest, he wasn't. They brought in another option with what looked like an opportunity that he had early in the season, played a couple games, and then was moved back to the bench. He's going to play here, you would imagine. It's a good spot for him. It's a good spot. So we're happy about that. 2 goalkeepers getting games. A couple months ago, we had no idea what was going to happen to either of these two. It's ended well. Now, the attacking options. Let's start with Daryl Dk, who has actually scored a goal for West Bromwich Albion. West Brom, a yo-yo team. They're in the Premier League, they're down. They're in, they're out. So it is safe to say that Daryl Dk could very well be a Premier League player next season. I think that's a good bet. I think a lot of people see West Brom coming up. New management, and Daryl Dk is being looked at as a big part of getting them up there. He is a physical specimen. He stayed in the Hofs. He's turned down, not that he was going to be called in, but the way we were told is Daryl Dk was going to focus on his club, which he did, and he wants to hit the ground running. I think he's going to get some goals. I think he's going to get some goals early. He also had to come off the bench to score, but he came off the bench and scored a goal in a friendly. So Daryl Dk, to me, it was a game against Hertha Berlin, has a shot. He replaced Carlin Grant. So he has a couple guys to beat out there, but he'll get playing time, whether on the bench or occasionally starting. Daryl Dk is just 22 years of age, a guy who can maybe seize this opportunity. Can it get him to the number 9? It's going to be Herculean for him to beat out Ferreira, Pepe, in particular, who have played so much already in that number 9 role. Haji Wright, the last guy called in, Jordan Pefok, playing in Bundesliga 1 now. But it's possible. It's possible. No one really can give you what Daryl Dk does. He has to be better at every aspect. You know, if you're playing as a number 9, we always judge them on goals. But in the modern game, and the U.S. men's national team and Greg Berhalter at least is trying to play a modern style, the number 9 has to do so much more. Has to close passing lanes, has to high press, has to do all those things well. And if he's lost doing that, which others that we've mentioned have looked lost, I think Jordan Pefok at the top of that list, then there may not be room for you. So you got to work on all those parts of your game. The last one, and again, we're not, maybe Sebastian Soto gets hot. I don't know. Maybe Matthew Olasunde does as well. Is Josh Sargent, who's had a real up and go with Norwich. We would like to see him get a good run of play. He's started as a number 9. Now he's moved to the right wing. But I think moving to the right wing might provide him an opportunity to crack this team. But he needs to score goals. He needs to score goals. I did see some on YouTube of a game against Marseille, which Norwich won 3-0. He played the first half. He was nowhere to be seen. Really didn't do much. They've brought in Jordan Hugel, who is a long campaigner in English football. He scored 2 goals in that game. And I'm not saying this is one friendly, but he also scored another goal when Sargent went to the bench. So they also have Timu Puki, and I think he'll get minutes at Norwich, but I just don't know if he's going to get the goals. But this is the one that I think is most interesting because we know the talent that Josh Sargent, completely untapped, by the way. And if in a year or two he doesn't meet, maybe a year, if he doesn't meet those expectations that we set on him, we're not going to keep him in that high standard. We can't because we hasn't produced. So this is a big year for Sargent. He knows it. And these next few months can determine. he has a short path, to, in my estimation, to make it to the World Cup roster. If it's him and Jordan Morris, maybe Paul Arriola. Because Paul Arriola will probably get in there for another reason. But if it's him and Jordan Morris, if there's room for one of those two, Jordan Morris's injury record and a couple other things may hold him back. Josh Sargent can get that job. So, in closing, Zach Steffen benefits the most. Josh Sargent certainly could get in there. Daryl Dk, it's a longer journey, but goals can certainly change everything. It's possible. And then Ethan Horvath, maybe just competing to make sure he makes that roster, realistically. But there we go. Let's watch the English Championship. We'll watch it. We'll enjoy it. You don't have to watch all of it. It's not that many teams and players. Make sure you subscribe. The Soccer OG. Check out the Soccer OG podcast where all podcasts are available.